Hey everyone, Andrew here. Happy New Year. It is now 2025. And it being January, I like to do my top 5 best and worst films of the year. Previous years, I usually do like my numbers 5 through 2, and then I give my honorable or dishonorable mentions, and then I go into my number 1. This year, I've decided not to do that, choosing to do the dishonorable and honorable mentions as their own separate video. That's going to be a little bit more bare bones and a little less edited together. I'm choosing to do that for a number of reasons. One is I like to have these top 5 films be a little bit better polished, and trying to do that for all of this honorable mentions takes a lot of effort and a lot of time, and I don't really have as much of that as I would like to right now. Also, I always end up having to cut things out of my honorable and dishonorable mention because I don't like making these top 5 videos like an hour plus. So I keep thinning it out to try and fit into a more reasonable time frame. And I don't like doing that because there are certain films that I just really want to shout out, but I can't because I gotta cut them because I don't have much to say about them other than you should see this or it was awful. So I'm going to have that as its own separate list that I'm going to do a little bit less editing on, and I'm just going to focus on making these films as decent as I can. And you know me, I like to go over the worst films of the year first, so we will be going over the top 5 worst films of 2024. I watched a couple other people's lists before I went and made mine, and I can tell you right now, most of what's on my list were not on other people's lists. I found a lot of really more obscure and insane streaming stuff that to me were way worse than a lot of the theatrical ones that got thrown under the bus. But let's get into it. I Heart Robots. So I Heart Robots is a film from writer, director, and actor Justin Price, who made this incredibly low-budget film about people in a post-robot apocalypse. And you have this main girl who's been separated from her sister, and she's on the other side of the country. And main girl is very timid and doesn't want to go out and doesn't want to fight, but then oh no, her sister's in trouble, so she and her ally travel out into the wilderness despite having no combat skills of any kind or shape or form. So she travels out into the dangerous wilderness and ends up running into these hunters who teach her how to be a warrior and how to fight and how to survive. And then she gets to the camp where her sister is, and nothing is the way she expects it to be. And if any of that sounds vaguely familiar, it's because it's the exact same plot as Love and Monsters from 2020. The only difference is Love and Monsters had monsters instead of robots as the main antagonists, and it was about a boy going after a girl that he had a crush on versus, a sister. That said, Love and Monsters is a dramatically better film than I Heart Robots is. Because I Heart Robots is just terrible. For starters, every single frame of this film is as cheap as possible. It is poorly shot, got some practical sets which are pretty decent, but a lot of it is really bad green screen effects. The robots are all digital creations, but they're all really terrible digital creations that are slightly off or slightly out of focus. Some of them look like they were scrunched down to fit into the frame, and does not work really well. You have an annoying main character who does voiceover for the entire film. And her character does not fit this environment in any way, shape, or form. She's incredibly upbeat and peppy.
Yeah. It's her birthday coming up. She doesn't think I remembered it, but I did a little bit of research, and I found out it was coming up, so.
And I'm like, you just went through the robot apocalypse. You watched a good chunk of humanity die, including your parents, and you got separated to the other side of the country from your sister. Why are you so upbeat and happy for no reason? Literally, she acts like that after a gunfight where she nearly died, and she's still this chipper, upbeat thing.
Wake up, Sparky. Let's go grub hunting.
It's like watching Little Orphan Annie go through Terminator Salvation. It does not mesh. It's so weird. She also wears this weird silver bodysuit for the entire film that just doesn't make sense and is really off-putting. All of the terrible action scenes, all of the terrible fights. There's a big fight scene where this woman just does a front flip for no reason. Like, it's not like she got shot or she's ducking behind cover. She just rolls in the ground for no reason. The only star they have in this is Danny Trejo, and he's only in flashbacks and barely used. He has like maybe 4 minutes of screen time through the entire thing. Our main girl's best friend is a robot who is voiced by the writer/director of the film, Justin Price.
I was scared as shit.
Wait, what?
I mean, my emotional response was fear.
And no one bats an eye at her having a robot companion in the robot apocalypse. And I get that he is an older model and didn't have the connection thing, but the way prejudice like this tends to work is that they would just hate robots, period, and they would try to wipe them all off the ground because they're all dangerous. Like, the fact that everyone just saw this robot and immediately went, okay, cool. It's like, one of the weird things with this is that her and her sister have completely different accents. Like, she has a more American kind of accent, and her sister has this slightly Polish, Ukrainian, Russian accent, and it's never addressed or explained in any way, shape, or form.
I keep him around for, I guess. You talk to Q?
Sometimes it's good to talk to somebody who doesn't know everything that happened, you know?
There's a point in this where the main girl comments how she hates the cliches of doing flashbacks, and then proceeds to tell flashback stories throughout the entire length of this film. That not only is bad writing, that is lazy as hell writing. You can tell they were trying to go meta. Like, if I point it out, you can't call me lazy for doing that. And I'm like, no, the fact that you pointed it out and then proceeded to continue to do it means you're lazy and stupid. Like, geez Louise, you don't point out a thing that's bad in writing and then do it multiple times. Legitimately, the only real positive I can give this film is that it at least is mostly shot in focus. Compared to some others on this list, that makes this okay. At the end of the day, this is just a really boring, dull mess that was handled so much better in Love and Monsters. Honestly, go watch Love and Monsters. Stay the heck away from I Heart Robots. At this time, I would like to state that none of the Sony Let's Do Spider-Man Without Spider-Man verse films made it into my bottom 5. Not to say they aren't terrible films, because they are, but they were not the worst films I saw this year. They weren't even the worst comic book film I saw this year. That one has to go to Joker Folie à Deux. Now, the reason why Joker's on this list as opposed to any of the Sonyverse ones is because the Sonyverse ones had next to zero chance of being good. They were made by a company that was doing it only for the money. They were quick cash-ins. Some of them, especially Madame Web, were fundamentally flawed from conception. Madame Web is a film that no one should have ever thought to even make, because who in the world would want to make a film about Madame freaking Web? This old lady that sits on a chair and gives Spider-Man advice on occasion. Those never stood a chance of being good. Joker Folie à Deux could have been a masterpiece. It could have been an amazing film. It had so much going for it. Great director and a great star who had already done a really successful, really well done film. Like, I'm not even a big, huge fan of the first Joker film. I thought it was okay with an exceptional performance from Joaquin Phoenix. For me, it was just a rehash of Kings of Comedy, which is my least favorite Scorsese film, so of course I don't like the rehashed version of it all that much. There's stuff in that one that I thought were good and worked really well. And then as they were talking about what they were going to do with Joker Folie à Deux, I got more and more excited. I'm like, okay, so you're bringing it back. It's going to be about the struggle of trying to be Arthur Fleck, but also Joker, and figure that out. We're bringing in Lady Gaga as Harleen Quinzel. Okay. And then we're going to make this a jukebox musical with two people that have singing talent. Okay, I got interested. I actually was really excited for this one. And then the reviews started coming out for it, and then I saw it. Joker Folie à Deux is a film that was clearly made to give a middle finger to anyone that liked the first one. This was a film made out of spite, because the director did not like the message that we got from the first film. So you can tell from the second one, his entire message with the first Joker film and with this film is that Joker is not a character you're supposed to connect to. You are not supposed to idolize him. You are supposed to pity him. And of course, it's the Joker. Of course we idolized him, especially when he was going crazy and stuff. But because we didn't get the message that he wanted, he decided to tank this film as hard as possible. And jeez Louise, did he do that. Like, it is a film that doesn't work on any level except the visuals. It has a horrible script, horrible choices, and it's so frustrating because so much of this should have worked. You had a good director. You had a great lead who had already won an Academy Award for playing this character. You had a strong supporting cast. You had an interesting concept. You had unique ideas. And then they just didn't do any of it. This doesn't feel like a film that Todd Phillips even wanted to do. It feels like he was dragged into this kicking and screaming and forced to make this film. He decided to make as awful a film as he possibly could to F with the audience and then make sure that no one would ever want to go back to this character, and that even if they did, they couldn't. Like, that ending is the giant final F you to everybody, because you will never get the Joker version that you wanted. He actively spends the entire movie not letting you have the Joker that he set up at the end of the first film. Like, that Joker doesn't exist. That guy is not there. It is Arthur Fleck pretending to be that guy when he knows he isn't anymore. And I knew from the opening animation that this was meant to be a satire. Like, this is, you want this, you're not gonna get it. You're not getting it whatsoever. And I'm like, okay, are you going to give me anything interesting in its place? No. Okay, so you're just going to give me this boring-ass slog of a film. There's a couple elements in this that almost sort of work. It is decently shot. There's one scene in this during the trial where he is interviewing one of his former co-workers, and he's like, I was a good friend to you. I made you laugh. I was, nice to you when others weren't. And hit the friend going, no, you traumatized me.
Anything that day. I felt so small. I was reminded how powerless I really am. Do you know what that feels like, Arthur?
Like, that one scene is the only saving grace of this entire film, because there is nothing else here. Lady Gaga is just there for the sake of being there. She is so clearly there as a character just to ride Joker's coattails, and you're like, how does Joker not see that when literally everyone around him is telling him that? And then you have the musical numbers and the singing, none of which is really good. Like, they're all really bad covers of these songs. Even Lady Gaga, who's a professional pop artist, doesn't sound good in any of these songs. And none of the songs really add anything or make the film remotely more interesting or better. They're just there. It is a film that not only is bad in its own right, but it actively drags the first one down with it. A film designed to piss people off because he did not want to make Joker 2. And it's like, I get that you didn't want to make Joker 2. Why did you make it then? You could have just not. This is honestly very awful, and it's just hurts more because it was so close to have been something amazing. Like, if it had just been made out of a desire to be made and not made as a contractual obligation by someone who wanted the character to die. Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. This is an animated SpongeBob film focused on Sandy Cheeks from the SpongeBob universe, who is a squirrel that lives in Bikini Bottom in the ocean studying animal creatures for her scientists over in Texas. And the scientists decide to scoop up Bikini Bottom and steal all of the inhabitants. And it's up to Sandy Cheeks and SpongeBob to go save all of Bikini Bottom. And it's awful. It's really bad. Like, when the only good thing I can say about the film is at least it has the original supporting cast from the show, you know something is wrong, because it is uninteresting, unfunny, uncreative, just boring and monotonous and annoying and ugly to watch. Like, it's not even the good hand-drawn animation that the show was, but it's that bad 3D CGI version that they did for the last SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. You know, the one that even I didn't go see. But I ended up watching this one out of morbid curiosity. But they spend the majority of the time just hanging out with Sandy's family, who are not really fun or really interesting. It's badly shot, badly put together. Sandy doesn't even really get any kind of development or growth in this. It's just an adventure she went on that she dragged us along with her. This film makes the first SpongeBob film looks like a masterpiece. The animation style is ugly and terrible. The script is awful and unfunny. The characters are terribly written, have very poor motivation. SpongeBob should have ended a decade ago. Like, the fact that it's still trying to keep doing this in 2024, and this is the product that we're getting from it, like, they need to let SpongeBob die. Like, because it has not been good for a very long time. It is sadly not the worst animated film of the year. Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. Yeah, this is the worst animated film of the year, and this one just makes me sad. Because I love the Megamind film. It is among my favorite of DreamWorks films. It's in my top 3 under the first 2 Shrek films. I love that first film, and I have been desperate for a sequel for 14 years. I have been begging and praying for a sequel to this, and somewhere a monkey paw went off and we got the absolute worst version of Megamind we could have possibly freaking gotten. For starters, it's not even made by DreamWorks' main people. It is made by their television department, specifically the part that does all of the, like, Christmas specials. You know, those things that are barely watchable for 10 minutes. There's such a dramatic drop in the quality. Like, this is very horrible CGI for even a made-for-TV thing. Everything about this film screams that it was made for TV, that it is a TV pilot. Because it is. It is the first part of what became the Megamind television show called Megamind Rules. And I watched this film, and I had no desire to watch that television show, but I eventually told myself I had to try. I couldn't get past the first episode. It was so bad. Both the show and this film are made for the youngest demographic possible. It is a film made for 4-year-olds or less. The humor is all the worst puns you've ever heard. Just the lowest bar puns you've ever made. They changed Megamind's main sidekick's name from Minion to Old Chum. And I'm 100% certain they did that because they didn't want it to be compared to the Despicable Me films, or to get sued by Illumination for using the name Minion, despite the fact that Megamind came out first, and had the character Minion then. But they chose to call him Old Chum because, you know, pun. And he has a kid sidekick that helps him out through the story. So the animation quality is garbage. It's just the lowest, cheapest, most pathetic animation that you can find out there. The characters are the lowest version of them they've ever been. They didn't get a single member of the original cast back for this show. I could have understood if they hadn't gotten Will Ferrell back, because he's a bigger name now than he was when he did this, but you couldn't get David Cross or Tina Fey? Really? I don't even think they tried. I'm pretty sure they just recast everyone because they were planning to make this as cheap as possible. And they chose absolutely terrible performances and actors. The plot of the film isn't even that awful. Like, the idea that Megamind created this syndicate of villains when he was a bad guy and then forgot about it, and now they broke free and want to, you know, rejoin the group together, and he has to pretend to still be a villain to infiltrate them and get to stop them while trying to, you know, be the hero at the same time. That could have been interesting if they'd had, you know, any desire to make that interesting. Megamind 1 versus this is a perfect example of the good film for kids versus film made for kids. Because Megamind 1 is a film that can be enjoyable no matter your age, but you can get something different out of it at different ages and enjoy it no matter what age you are. This is something you will like when you're 3, and then you will try to watch it again when you're 7. You're like, this is awful. Why did I watch this? This is garbage. And it's so frustrating because you could have done so much with this. We are in the superhero boom / fatigue. Film that goes meta and talks about this stuff would have been great. Like, the original Megamind did that very well. But this has nothing in it. It's a nothing film. It doesn't need to exist. No one should watch it. It has a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I honestly think it deserves lower. It's a terrible waste of time. It was a terrible waste of DreamWorks money. It is a complete insult to the film that it's based off of. I legitimately felt that this was going to be my least favorite film of the year. And it should have been. Like, there's no way a film should be made worse than this, right? This is a film that works on 0 levels. You can't make a film worse than this. I honestly did not think there was going to be any film worse than Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate this year. And then I stumbled across this little horror movie, and I'm like, oh, I'll give it a shot. And not only is this my #1 worst film of this year, it is legitimately one of the worst films I have ever seen. It is a film called Horny Teenagers Must Die. I'm sure this will not appear on anybody else's list, because I don't think many people would choose to watch a horror film called Horny Teenagers Must Die. I did, because I'm an insane person who has a really, really terrible brain that's like, you have to watch something with a title that stupid. And so it is legitimately just a bunch of horny teenagers go out into the woods to have sex, and they get killed by a guy with an axe. It's the most bare bones, basic horror film plot you can do, and they effed that up as hard as they possibly could. It is one of the worst shot films I've ever seen. Every single time the camera is on a person, it is 6 inches or more too close to them. They are very rarely ever in focus. They are not well lit, and they have no film makeup on whatsoever, so they are all ghastly and pale, and it just looks horrendous to look at. The film then also has a number of shots that are just weird, random angles for no freaking reason other than to be artsy. The only film that I've seen that is more poorly shot was Be My Teacher, where the entire film was shot through a fisheye lens, where you couldn't see the person if they were outside of the middle of the screen. I watched a film from last year called Aggro Drift, which was shot with an infrared camera by a director who didn't want to make a film. And that film is more well put together and tolerable than this film was. And if it just been bad filmmaking, okay, I might be able to get over that. But then this also has some of the worst acting I've ever seen in film. No one can act, no one can talk, no one can even speak well. There's no background music in any scene. The scenes are either in complete silence.
Let me help you with that.
Or with the noisiest freaking crickets you've ever heard. Like, so much so that you can't even hear the dialogue because the crickets are drowning it out.
And you stick your finger up your anus and you just like put some pressure on that rectum.
If you do it just so.
You have issues, man. You need to get laid.
The script is just asinine. The story is awful. It's a film where, of course, it cuts to sex every couple minutes, but it is the most boring, uninteresting PG-13 sex you've ever seen. Like vanilla missionary sex where you see next to nothing except like the guy's back, and maybe once in a while you'll see part of a boob. The one time they actually do any kind of interesting sex scene, they're both wearing wolf masks for no freaking reason, and it's badly at a bad angle, and you can't. It's just the worst. Some people have give this film a pass because it's such a generic plotline. No, that makes it even worse because you effed up the most generic slasher film premise of all time to a degree that it's not even watchable. Like, I watched another film this year that's the exact same plot. It was called Don't F in the Woods. It was the same idea, except they were teenagers that were getting killed in the woods were being killed by an alien monster and not by a normal human serial killer. And I give that film credit more than this one because that one is at least shot in focus. It's at least competently shot. The camera is looking in the right direction. And has more interesting sex scenes with people you actually want to see naked, whereas none of these characters do I want to see naked. Or on screen, because they are so bland and so awful and so terrible, but not in the fun kind of terrible where you want to watch them get murdered. In the, oh god, I just want to turn this off kind of way, where like not even them dying is interesting. It's because it's all quick and off screen and just, ugh. This is a film that I wanted to turn it off at minute 1. And I went, no, I have to try. I have to push through this. I was legitimately feeling my soul leave my body and go straight down into hell. Because it wanted so desperately to get away from this torture. I even tried to convince myself to give this one a second viewing. And I put it on for 2 seconds and I turned it off because I was like, no, I can't do it. I cannot put myself through that awfulness again. This is legitimately among the worst things I have ever seen in my life. It is awful from start to finish. There's not a single shot, not a single frame, not a single word in this that is remotely good. Is it the worst thing I've ever seen? No. Sadly. But it is damn close. I would say it's in my bottom 5 of all time. Like, it's down there with Be My Teacher and Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Like, how did you make a film worse than Megamind and the Doom Syndicate? Seriously. That was my 5 worst films of the year. I can guarantee you no one else is gonna have some of these on their list. But that's just my opinion. What do you all think? Did you see some of these films? Have you even heard of some of these films? Am I completely wrong and Joker Folie à Deux is actually a masterpiece? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I will see you all in the top 5 of the year, as well as, if you have any interest, my honorable and dishonorable mentions, which will come out later. Until then, happy watching, happy reading. I will see you all next time. Bye.